now we are going to talk to Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio, and he's going to tell us about some new proposals in the House that might address some of these bonus issues. Congressman Ryan, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Good to be back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have not received a retention bonus at all yet, so I'm waiting for that in the mail.
Maybe we're trying to tell you something.
Somebody's been trying to tell me something, but I still haven't gotten the message. So, Congressman Ryan, you guys have been trying to tell the folks at AIG, hey, this isn't going to fly, but they haven't heard the message either. So I understand you introduced a bill. So tell us about what's in that bill.
Well, Congressman Steve Israel, Carol Maloney, myself, and several others, instead of having this long, drawn-out fight about honoring contracts and, who's right and who's wrong and who did this and who didn't and all that good stuff, we figured, you know what, we just need the money back, reestablish some trust with the American people, and the best way to do that is through the tax code. And I think we're going to have a bill come to the floor probably tomorrow that's going to say, and it'll be a version of this bill, that basically anyone who has received TARP money and bonuses were given out, that 90% of those bonuses will be taxed, or 100% of those bonuses will be taxed, and we'll just recoup the money. And so instead of having a long, drawn-out fight, we'll just put this sucker on and put like a surcharge on and get the money right back.
Well, that's interesting in a couple of different ways. First, you think that's going to come to a vote tomorrow?
I'm hoping we could do something this week, and I heard that this may fly this week, if not early next week. But, I mean, everyone's really upset. This is just something that somehow snuck by. A lot of people didn't know anything about it, so I think there's really a lot of movement to act on this immediately.
Look, I'm not as convinced, I got to be honest with you, because I know that the government did know about the bonuses. We all know. They knew back in the fall that this was going to happen. So when Tim Geithner says he found out last week, I frankly don't believe him. So,
well, there may be some people who knew about it. I don't know, and I'm sure that'll all come out probably in the next few days as well, who knew what. But rank-and-file members like myself, I mean, there's a lot of people who weren't in the conference negotiations for the TARP, for the stimulus, whatever the case may be, and those are the people who are really upset about this, and so something will get done, and will get done immediately. Yeah, there may have been a handful of people who knew about it, but for the most part, most people didn't know what was going on.
So, I mean, I got to wonder about the Treasury Department. What's going through their head? Because, they say behind closed doors, no, you don't understand. These guys absolutely, positively need the bonuses. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and the whole financial system is going to collapse. But now that the public is angry, all of a sudden they're backpedaling and say, oh, no, we didn't know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, have you ever had anybody from the Treasury Department or anyone else in Congress explain to you why it is so imperative to the economy that these guys get these damn bonuses?
Well, the argument is, and we've all heard it, is that, if you don't pay market rate for some of these positions, that no one will fill them, which I fundamentally disagree with. I think there are a lot of people who will fill these positions. And if you look at what AIG is doing right now, they're nothing but a pass-through. I mean, we're giving them money, and they're giving money to the banks that they insured and owed money, on their coverage to. And so AIG at this point is just a pass-through. So I don't see what the whole complication is with these positions. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who could take these positions right now, especially with all the job loss, even in the financial sector.
See, that's a great point. And we're talking to Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio. So if AIG takes this money and pays all that they owe to, for example, Goldman Sachs, who's gotten the most amount of money from AIG, passed over in bailout money, over $12 billion. And we also gave bailout money to Goldman Sachs, so they're getting paid over twice. Aren't we getting screwed here? Because shouldn't they have renegotiated some of those contracts and said, hey, listen, you guys knew what kind of shape we were in? Goldman Sachs actually considered buying AIG and decided against it a couple of years ago because they realized they were in such bad shape. So why are we footing the whole bill? Shouldn't the people, like partners like Goldman Sachs, foot some of this bill?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the risk you run is, what AIG was insuring. And the problem is that there are, millions and millions of American people, their annuities, their pensions that are wrapped up in this whole deal. And that
I can guarantee you they didn't get paid first. I can guarantee you Goldman Sachs got paid first.
Well, there's no doubt about it, but their pension would evaporate if we weren't helping AIG to help meet some of their obligations that they had. I mean, Thomas Friedman had the best line the other day. He said, fairness has left the building. I mean, we're so far beyond fair right now, it's not even funny. But we're just trying to establish a system here where people who are living in Youngstown, Ohio, who may have their pension wrapped up in some of these complex financial schemes that were going on and could get hurt by AIG going belly up, we're here to protect them. And it may look like we're giving it to AIG, but the bottom line is the end result is screwing the guy's eyes out on Main Street in Youngstown, Ohio.
Tim, it seems like we're waiting for Godot when we're waiting for the bankers to become fair. That's not how things are supposed to be structured. Look, if we wait for if you say to somebody, hey, look, you can take a couple $1 million home, but it'll hurt the taxpayer a little bit, they're going to take it home every single time.
Right.
I mean, we shouldn't be surprised that they're quote unquote being greedy. Isn't it our job to set the rules and say, hey, here's what you can and cannot do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we want to establish tomorrow, or hopefully early next week. And what our bill wants to establish is, the era of greed and arrogance and thumbing your nose at the American people and just creating their own culture, it's over. And if we've got to go to the tax code to tax your bonus at 100% so you don't get a dime of it, then we will do that. And I think, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is very complicated. This isn't, as cut and dry as people think. We're in a global economy, global finance, global businesses, multinational corporations, all of these complicated credit default swaps and all this good stuff that most people don't really understand. So it takes a while to figure this out. And we're going to make mistakes along the way, but the bottom line is when we find out about something, we act immediately and we try to make things right. And we've got to change the culture. I mean, I'll tell you a story. In the last 2 weeks in Youngstown, Ohio, there's a company that employed a bunch of people called Amweld. The company went belly up. They moved to Mexico. The retirees who worked for Amweld had health care. Well, so in January and February, these retirees went to the doctor, drove up, their doctor bills, and did what, the senior citizens do. They go to the doctor. They find out last week or two ago that their health care got cut back in January, and they've got to foot the bill for the January and February bills. So they got totally screwed. But they're sitting here going, I'm totally screwed here. Nobody honored my contract. And I got to watch this on the news of these executives getting $165 million in bonuses. My point is that if we lose that trust of the American people, there's going to be no ability for us as leaders in the country to try to fix this problem because the American people won't have our back. The guy at Amwell is going to say, screw AIG, screw Wall Street, screw the Congress, screw everybody. No one's helping me, and I'm not going to help anybody else. And that's what we risk running into.
I agree completely, and I think, unfortunately, part of the problem here is the Treasury Department. It seems that they do not have that guy in Youngstown, Ohio's back. It seems that they have the back of Wall Street, and that's their constituency. And now I know they tell me until they're blue in the face about how complicated it is, but you know what? I'm a smart guy. Explain it to me. And Tim Geithner has never come out and made a defense of why we can never touch any of the salaries of any of these guys or any of the bonuses, and he pushed for it. And we know for a fact that he removed provisions from a bill that during the last stimulus bill, where he came out and said, no, we don't go after their bonuses, as Senator Wyden wanted to do, and Olympia Snowe, and Chris Dodd, etc. Several different provisions were removed. So when you look at that, I got a question. Is Tim Geithner the right guy for the job? What do you think?
Well, Geithner at this point is dealing with a heck of a lot of issues, and, I don't know, what his thinking was. If that was his thinking, as you just articulated it, he was in the wrong and obviously didn't understand, what was going on in the lack of backing that he would get from the American people and the kind of backlash that this would create. I'm all for bonuses down the line. If these people who are working at AIG or anywhere else, some of the people who have hung around, and a year from now, they help us get out of this financial problem. They help us stabilize the markets. Hey, you know what? Maybe you did earn a bonus because you probably busted your rear end to help us fix the problem. And even though you may have made mistakes, or maybe you didn't, and you were just kind of an underling who was, caught up in towing the company line. We understand that. But if you help us get out of it a year from now, you know what? I think everybody would say, okay, maybe you should get a little bit of a bonus here or there. And you're obviously going to be a success, and your market value will go up because the market has turned around. But not today, not now. And if Geithner made that mistake, then he made a mistake. But I still think Geithner is the guy for the job. He may not have the best political skills and understand what's going on Main Street, but he seemed at the time I met with him and heard him, he seemed very sensitive, very aware of what was going on around the country. And, I think we've got the best and brightest trying to fix this problem, and they're just doing the best they can. And if they screw up, then our job is to step in and fix it.
Yeah, I don't have nearly the confidence that you do in Tim Geithner. I have not seen him in his actions perform in a way that gives me that confidence.
Well, history is going to be the judge. I mean, this isn't something I think.
I know, but the history is going to come around in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Because we got to get on this and we got to fix it, because there's another $600 billion in bonuses or retention awards that AIG alone has coming up. People aren't even talking about that. And when that happens, everybody's going to be shocked all over again. But the reason that they get to keep all these bonuses, and then now there's Morgan Stanley bonuses that are coming up. The reason all these bonuses are coming up is because Tim Geithner set the rules so that they can get the bonuses.
Right.
So he better learn that lesson now, not in the history. I mean, he's got to show tangible action here to turn this thing around. And so far, I mean, I've seen some statements from the president where he seems to get it, but I haven't seen it from Geithner.
Well, I do worry that there's not a guy around in there from Youngstown State University or South Dakota State University or somewhere that there's a real sense of that kind of what's happening on the street right now. And I think they're getting it. I know the president gets it. Maybe Geithner hasn't been quite as articulate in the understanding or expressing the understanding of what some of these policies are. But I'll tell you, in the long run, this is not something you can judge. The stock market went up 300 or down 300 in a day, or what has transpired in a couple of days. I think this is going to be evaluated at the end of the day after what has transpired over the course of months and years, and did they properly lay the foundation for growth? Did they free up credit? Does credit start freeing up here? And we'll know that probably in the next few months or the next year. And, if the job's not done by then I think, we got to take what your comments are very seriously and reevaluate what's going on.
Well, we're talking to Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio, and I want to talk about your proposal. By the way, that little proposal you had just a little while earlier, one of your colleagues actually suggested it to Edward Liddy today in Congress. I was watching it live, and he said, hey, I'll give you double the bonus if at the end you get us out of this mess, but as long as you promise not to take the bonus now. And you know what Ed Liddy said to him?
What?
Hell no! He said, no way. No, we're taking the money right now. No. So I don't trust these guys at all. All right, now, you're going to take 100% in the tax. Congressman, is that legal? Can we do that? Could go and say, hey, look, you know what? If we think something is wrong, we're going to take it back for the government by putting 100% tax on it?
We could do it this year. Now, we can't do it retroactively. Some people got bonuses last year. We can't go back and get that money. That's unconstitutional to retroactively go back and get money off of people. But you can do it in this tax year. We're writing it for this tax year, and it's completely constitutional for us to do it.
And it wouldn't be just the AIG guys, right? You're saying anybody making over $100,000 in bonus that got bailout money.
That got TARP money, that's correct.
All right, so it would apply if Morgan Stanley had a round of bonuses, et cetera, in 2009, it would apply to them as well.
Yeah, in the future, you were talking about future bonuses for AIG or whoever else, it would all apply in this tax year. We can write it into the future as well. And like I said, and like the guy said on committee that you just quoted, if down the line these folks get us out of this mess, then there should be some carrots at the end of the day for those people who help do that. And I think, that's capitalism. That's the real fundamental part of a capitalistic system. You reward good products, good behavior get rewarded. We're giving bonuses to people who ran the damn company into the ground.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. So finally, Tim, what do you think the chances of this passing are? So in the House and then when it goes to the Senate, et cetera?
Well, it sounds pretty good. Our leadership has been very positive to the bill. It may not look exactly like ours. There may be something negotiated where it's not just clean like we proposed it yesterday. Senator Schumer gave the same speech, Dodd, the whole 9 yards. All those guys are on board for it. So I think something's going to happen. Quite frankly, I think something has to happen, because if we lose the credibility and the trust with the American people, there's going to be no future moves that we're going to be able to make without the American people's backing. And if we don't do something to let them know that we're sensitive to what's going on, then, you know, we're going to be on an island here and not be able to move with any of these tools that we have to try to help the situation. So I'm confident something will happen. I hope something happens tomorrow, but if not, in the next few days. We'll go home tomorrow, but we'll be back next week.
Hey, Tim, I got to be honest with you. 2 days ago, I predicted that you guys were not actually going to do anything, okay? And I hope to God that you prove me wrong and that it's your bill that passes through and that we actually get the money back.
Well, if you're wrong on that, I want to see who you picked in the basketball tournament. I'm going with the opposite.
All right. Hold on 1 second. Apparently our producer wants to ask you a question. Dave, go ahead.
Congressman Ryan, you mentioned your bill will get the bonus back or tax at a high level if the company received TARP money. But did AIG receive TARP money, or is it covered by this bill, or did AIG just receive money from the Fed?
Well, they got some TARP money too, I think, and and I think some of the Fed. It depends on how we write this, but it could include some federal money or anything that they got from the Fed. But I think they did get TARP money in either the first tranche or the second tranche. They did get a lot of help from the Fed as well, but I don't think everything that they got came from the Fed. I think some of it was TARP money, so they would be, that's basically what this bill has been written for.
Right, and how the Fed gives out our money is a whole different question, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, we need a couple hours to go through that.
Right, exactly. All right, Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Hey, we got the Akron Zips, we got Cleveland State, we got Xavier, and we got Ohio State in the tournament. Let's go Buckeyes, huh?
All right, that's a lot of guys from Ohio, and I don't think any of them are going to make it. But
You're hurting me.
All right.
See you guys.
All right, take care.
Take care.
All right, we'll be right back. Young Turks.